Good morning. My name is Amy Collins, and I am a worship associate and a commissioned lay minister of this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. I bid you welcome, whether you are here in person, watching live as it unfolds virtually, or playing catch up at a later time or date on our YouTube channel. In case you're new to our community or to Unitarian Universalism, let me tell you a little bit about us. As Unitarian Universalists, one of our core principles is recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person. As a community, we recognize the interconnected web of all existence. As a pluralist faith, we're happy to have you join us, whether you celebrate the earth, the goddess, love Jesus, follow the teachings of the Buddha, or find your inspiration and comfort from the reliability of science or humanist teachings. Our covenant with one another transcends race, gender identity, sexual identity, financial means, age, and all of the other elements of who we are that some might use to divide us. We hope that you'll find something that nourishes you today, whether that be comfort, connection, challenge, or acceptance, or inspiration. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, know that you are welcome here. We especially welcome any guests who are joining us for the first time today. If you're interested in more information about who we are, we invite you to fill out one of the guest cards that are in the pew rack in front of you. And you can place that card in the offering plate when it comes around later in the service. We'll be able to reach out to you and answer any questions you might have about our congregation. If you're watching from an internet platform, you can go to our website, uucleveland.org, to learn a little bit more about us there. Time for a little bit of housekeeping. On the back of your order of service, we still have our QR code. Take a moment to scan that. That's our contact tracing form, so we can let you know if we still have COVID out there. So if we find out you've been in close contact with somebody and you were here today, we'll let you know. You can also deal with that bit.ly link on your computer when you get home. We are about to enter sacred space, so if you've not already done so, this is the perfect time to silence your cell phones, any other things that go beep in the quiet. And now I invite you to join me in our chalice lighting. The words are on the yellow pew card in front of you. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Randy. My pronouns are they, them, and I am delighted to be with you in worship today, whether you're here in person or joining us online. John Shar reminds us that the future is not a result of choices among alternative paths offered by the present. The future is a place that is created first in the mind and will, created next in activity. The future is not some place we are going to, but one we are creating. The paths are not to be discovered, but made, and the activity of making them changes both the maker and the destination. So welcome to this time where we co-create a future together as we join in worship. We're going to sing number 128 in the gray hymnal, For All That Is Our Life. But before we do that, I invite you to take a moment to welcome one another. And if you see a face that you don't recognize, make a special effort to say good morning to that person too. Good morning. We bring a lot of things to be thankful for, things maybe that we are concerned about into this space together. And so we want to acknowledge that all of what we bring with us is welcome here, and we spend time to share our joys and concerns by placing a stone in the water. And hopefully you'll stick around afterwards to share what that stone is all about for you downstairs in the fellowship hall. If you're joining us online, I invite you to put any joys or concerns you'd like to share with the congregation in the comments down below so that we'll know what's going on in your life. I do have a special concern. I guess it's a joy. I'm hoping that it's a joy. But the Red Oak Community School at First UU in Columbus will be hosting a Holly Drag story time on Saturday for children and families, despite threats of protest by an extremist domestic terrorist organization. So we place a stone of prayers for safety and a wonderful, meaningful event. I plan on going in support, and so I'm very hopeful that it's a peaceful, meaningful time for all involved. We also have people in our congregation who are still traveling or who are about to be traveling, and so we place a stone of care and concern for their safety. And we rejoice that we see some new faces back with us after a time away, and so a stone of celebration for their presence with us. What else do you want to acknowledge today? I invite you to come forward and place a stone in the water for any joys or concerns you carry in your heart today. We place a stone to acknowledge those joys or concerns that were shared online today. And a final stone for those things that we may be carrying in our hearts that don't yet have a way to be expressed.
Well, good morning. How's everyone's Thanksgiving? I always think of the holiday season, so always where my mind goes to check back in the year, like what was I doing last year? What was I doing last Thanksgiving? What was it like previously? Especially, as you find yourself growing and evolving as a person, as a body in the world. Thanksgiving is always a good time to do that. Check in with your body. Anybody had a Thanksgiving that makes them feel like they need to check in with their body, see how their body's doing? Yeah, yearly coming around also, it reminded me of something I learned, and this is, a very general sort of average type thing. But apparently, on average, for average people, about every 7 years, you are a whole new person. We would never think about this, but of course, all the cells in your body, they don't just exist as themselves forever. That is not how your body works. Your body is constantly regrowing and reseeding and changing everything. And in about 7 years, all of the cellular parts of your body have refreshed themselves. So you get a whole new body every 7 years. So at most, the oldest person in this room right now is 7 years old. Does that make you feel better? Our bodies are important dialogue partners in our lives. Though speaking only for myself, but maybe this is your experience as well, I'm not always a good listener to my body. I don't always have a good conversation with what's going on in my bodily space, even though my body sometimes is telling me things about what I'm experiencing, what I'm going through, what my feelings are. My version of this experience of this was when I actually moved to Cleveland. Very long story, I won't get into all the details, but it involved picking up a U-Haul at the Bronx, New York U-Haul pickup, parking it in front of a fire hydrant illegally for long enough to load all the things that I had to load into the U-Haul, and then getting in the car and driving 8 hours in a snowstorm all the way to Cleveland, because after doing all of that one day, I was not stopping before I got here. But all that is to say, I woke up the next day, and of course I was tired, and I was feeling all those things, but for some reason, like, my jaw was really hurting, like back here, like I had that jaw pain, and my fingers were like throbbing with pain. And I had realized, I was not even totally aware of this, but I had been clenching my jaw and gripping the steering wheel so hard, I wasn't even aware of it. I had no idea. And it wasn't until I listened to my body, I shouldn't say I listened to my body. It wasn't until my body yelled at me the next day that I realized I had done all those things. So I want to invite everybody to do a little bodily check-in. If you feel up to it, I'd invite everybody to stand. And let's do a little listening to our bodies in that spirit to see how things are going. I was going to say, do little stretches, little movement here. Remind yourself you have fingers and toes and all of the other things that are around. So here's one, and I think a way to do this is to really try to be aware of your senses and think about some of these motions and if they really speak to what you feel comfortable in or like natural in. Do you feel natural if you do one of these? Maybe your stomach hurts a little bit. Maybe you feel a little anxiety in your chest. Does that feel familiar? You've been doing that a little bit, a little too much Thanksgiving fun. Now you're not feeling so great, so that actually feels better. If you're sick to your stomach, you kind of do one of these. Here's one. Talk about a part of my body I don't think about very often. Your eyes. Do you open them very wide? Does that feel like how you're seeing the world most of the time? Or by contrast, do you find yourself more squinting? Does this feel more like what you're used to? More of an attentive, maybe more pensive glance. Let's do that arm thing again. shake out. Does this feel familiar? Do you feel like you're just kind of moving a lot? Like you have like, the Jimmy arms, you just gotta move them around. Maybe you're feeling a little anxious. Maybe your body just doesn't want to settle. You're just kind of wrapped up with stuff. Here's one that maybe some of us can get to. Have you ever done a power pose before? It says you want to think you have a big cape behind you. Spread your legs a little bit. Then do the full Superman. I think you have to really turn up this way to really manage it. Up and to the left. Does that feel good? Like, does that feel natural to you? Does this feel confident? Maybe we can work on feeling better in our power poses. By contrast, this is one I deeply feel, because I often feel like I'm just big and gamely and taking up too much space. Do you ever feel like you want to be smaller? Want to be less? It's not as much? Maybe that tells you something about what you're feeling. But everybody sit back down. Couldn't finish this without pulling off an old Greek piece of wisdom. The Delphi oracle, famously in ancient Greece. One edict to all people who would visit the oracle. You've probably heard of it before. Anyone know what it is? The Delphi oracle said, know yourself. Know yourself. The idea was that was a challenge, but also a huge ask to know yourself. Extraordinary thing to ask to know yourself. And if our little exercises today are anything to learn from, it's that one of the ways that we know ourselves is not only through our emotions, not only through our psyche, not only through our mental, cerebral spaces, but also our bodies and what our bodies can tell us about how we are and who we are.
I invite you to sit comfortably, breathe deeply, close your eyes if you like, or find a comfortable spot to focus your gaze as I share this prayer of co-creation written by Lynn Cox. And when I finish reading the prayer, I will ring the bell and invite you to stay still for a little bit longer. And as a nice segue from Allan, just let it vibrate in your body and pay attention to where it resonates for you, and just let yourself rest into the sound. Creative Spirit, source of life and love, we give thanks for the beauty of this day and for the company of those assembled here. Thank you for the breezes of change, clearing our heads and bringing fresh ideas. May they cleanse our minds of the oppressions and isms that divide us. Thank you for the flame of hope, the heat of righteous anger, the warmth of compassion, and the fire of commitment. May they bubble the cauldrons of transformation. Thank you for the oceans of love, rivers of connection, tears of relief, and pools of serenity. May healing waters flow over us and through us and among us, wearing down the sharp rocks of despair to bring joy in the morning. Thank you for the good earth beneath us, around us, and within us. May we take this clay and co-create a new realm of justice and beauty. Thank you for all these and more. We accept our gifts and commit to building, sculpting, painting, singing, and dancing them to life, to abundant life. So be it. Blessed be, and amen. Take one last breath in with me and exhale. It's time in our service when we take an offering for something that matters, and for us, UUCC Forums That Matter is our recipient today. You may or may not be aware of the weekly forums that take place on Sunday mornings during fall and winter months that have been a distinctive part of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland's tradition for many years. During Forums That Matter, leading experts and leaders present current thought-provoking forums on a wide variety of issues that affect us both as individuals, the communities in which we live, and the world beyond. Just in October, we had programs to address the impact and options post-Roe, getting to know non-binary people. We discussed the lack of affordable housing and the financial challenges of healthcare and several other very important and timely topics. If you've never attended a forum and may not know what to anticipate, attendees from both inside and outside the congregation exchange views and participate in stimulating questions and answer sessions to create a stronger, more accountable, informed community. The weekly forums support the congregation's fourth principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. They encourage personal reflection, social action, and individual and collective growth for all who attend. And a few things that the Forum Committee wanted me to take the opportunity to let you know. This fall, forums returned to an in-person format. For a while, we had to do everything virtually, but now, while there is still a Zoom option, they hope that people will join in Fellowship Hall, as it does help to connect the audience with each other and the speakers. A little more lively discussion, as you can imagine, when people are there in person. Recordings from the past 5 years of forums are accessible via the forums panel on the homepage of our website, uucleveland.org. And they sent an evaluation survey out via email a few days ago, and the Forum Committee would appreciate your feedback. So check your email and take a moment to help with that. We're on a bit of a hiatus for the holidays, but the forums will resume January 15th. So in addition to checking out information on the website, feel free to ask Jean Martin for more details. She's not here today, but you can find her in the directory or probably link to her through the website as well. Please give generously within your means to support this important community outreach and social justice ministry in our congregation, either by placing your donation in the basket when it comes around or using our CashApp with our handle in the order of service, also $UUCC 44122. Thank you so much.
One of the things that is changing is the way that we support our forums that matter. They used to have a grant that would take care of a lot of the financial needs for that ministry, and those funds are no longer available. So we're changing the way that we support that ministry because it's something that we care about deeply. And so I invite you to read along with the acceptance of gifts that is on the yellow pew card. We offer these gifts with gratitude, and we acknowledge the constant gifts of time, talent, and treasure that strengthen and nourish this congregation as a reflection of our commitment to community within and without, our purposeful spirituality that is ever searching and growing, and our intentional actions that lead to greater justice in our congregation, our city, our nation, and our world. There are some changes that we do not ask for. We've been talking about change over the month of November, and we talked first about the grief that comes with change. Even if it's something we're excited about, there's some grief about what we're letting go of. But there are some things that change that we do not ask for. Even just looking around outside, the leaves change color, they fall off of the trees, the temperature changes, we don't ask for it. We can celebrate it. We can pretend that we are the victims of it. We can resist it, although I think that might be self-caused suffering if we try to resist the changing of the seasons, but they're going to change whether we want them to or not. And there are other changes that have happened in the world around us. The pandemic rewired some things that we were not prepared for. We weren't expecting it. We didn't ask for it. We didn't consciously choose it. But now family schedules are different than they used to be. There's less time to connect with the congregation than what we might have remembered from the past. There are competing priorities that didn't necessarily exist before. There are expectations of school and college prep and programs, more programs out in the community that nurture our young people's different talents and interests in ways that may not have existed before. People's willingness to just show up in person is different. That has changed. Some people would be happy if we were just virtual all the time and they never had to leave their houses again. We're glad that you're with us today, tuning in virtually. For some people, that would be just heaven, to just be able to Zoom everything all the time. And some people really need to be physically present with other human beings, and we've really longed for that, and now we're getting back together with people and remembering some things about how to human that we might have forgotten. Our needs are not all the same, but things have changed. And we changed how we connected because we had to. The world around us changed and we responded to it. But now we are different. We don't have to see change as something that happens to us, though. We have the possibility to be agents of change in our communities, in our congregation, in the world around us. We have the opportunity to make things different, intentionally, agents of change. Sometimes we react to the world out of our fear and anxiety, and we change things. We change the world around us because we're afraid of something. We're anxious about what might happen. But we can also be agents of change because we're that in tune with what we care about. We can decide, this is what I value, this is what matters to me, and therefore, this is what I'm going to pour out into the world around me. Either way, we can change the world around us. We can do it out of anxiety, or we can do it because we know what we envision for the world. We know what we want for our congregation. We know what we want for our neighborhoods. So it's not necessarily that we have to do something because we see things in the world around us and we say, oh my goodness, we have to do something. It's we have the opportunity to do something. We see things happening in the world around us, and we have the opportunity to affect change. And change doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. We are a faith tradition that is always evolving. We don't say we've ever got it all figured out and we can just stop growing and learning. That's not what Unitarian Universalism is about. That's what really, really frustrates some people about Unitarian Universalism. We are always discovering new things and learning new things about ourselves and the way that we do community with one another. And so change is just a way of saying we know something now that we didn't know before. I realize something that I value deeply now that I didn't quite realize the same way before. And so now we're going to change things because I'm not going to be rooted in a way that doesn't serve me as well. I'm going to embrace the opportunity to do things differently. And so one of the things we're doing here specifically has to do with the way that we minister to families and younger people. Because historically, one of the things that we did was we said, young people have certain needs, and we're going to put them over on that side of the building, and adults have other needs, and we're going to put them on this side of the building, and never the twain shall meet. And that was fine, and it served a purpose. And now we're realizing we want our community to look differently than that. And so we're trying to find ways to do things all together, so that if we have something happening that's a congregational activity, we want to see everybody there. We want to listen to the voices of our younger people and hear their wisdom, because their wisdom is different from some of our elders. It's not wise. It's still wise. It's just different wisdom. And so how do we be together and create space that ministers to everyone in our community? It's a different way of thinking about it. It's a change from what we might have done in the past. And our Sunday mornings are the times when we have to do that, because we aren't likely to see our young people at other times because they are so busy and overscheduled, and I feel so badly for them, but that's just the way it is. And so the time when we see them is Sunday mornings. And so that's the time that we want to focus on how are we ministering and meeting the needs of the young people, the families that are in our midst. This is when we see them. Now, maybe that will change too. Maybe there are some younger people, some families that will say, you know what we really need is we need a ministry that looks like this, and we need this kind of program that's going to meet these needs, and it needs to be on a Saturday morning once a month. And then we can say, great, we will empower you to create that thing. We will provide the resources and the encouragement, and we will support you in doing the thing that you say is going to be meaningful for you. But we're not going to try to guess. And we're not going to try to time things in a way that really doesn't make sense for you. We're going to be in communication and be in relationship in a different way. We're going to co-create something that's meaningful for everyone. And that's kind of another change that I think has been happening here. We are focusing more on connection and less on curriculum. Curriculum is nice. It's nice to have a framework, to know kind of we're going to talk about this particular thing when we get together. But the important thing is that we're going to get together. The important thing is that we're building relationship. Because as it turns out, connecting with one another is not something that I can do with a TED Talk. There are lots of things I can learn online now. If I want to learn what it is to be a Muslim in America, there are places I can go online, there are shows I can watch, there are speakers who are talking about that, there are people who have firsthand experience that I can share in their stories because they're willing to share that in ways that they weren't even able to do 20 years ago maybe. But now that's available. And so maybe we don't need to focus as well in our RE programs with what is it like to be Muslim in America? Let's make sure we get it right and cover all the details and make sure you have all of the knowledge that you need in order to understand this thing. You can get all of that information someplace else. But where are you going to talk about it? Where are you going to be in relationship with other people and have a conversation about what that might mean to you personally? Not just about being Muslim in America, but about anything, about what it's like after you die. What does that look like? What does it mean to pray? What does it mean to be in relationship with people who have completely different theologies than me, but we have the same values about the world? What does that look like? I can't learn that from a TED Talk, but I can learn that from relationship and connection with other human beings. So here, I think what I have seen is that we're prioritizing our relationships and our connections a little more than we're prioritizing making sure people have information. And hopefully we learn more about ourselves personally because we're able to do things in our worship space and in our religious exploration space that is less about intellectualism and radical individualism and more about community. Unitarians especially, but Universalists also, historically have held these values of being radically individualistic and being hyper-intellectual. It's something we don't always say out loud, but if you walk into a room of UUs, you probably think, oh, these are a bunch of smart people, and they're all really, really proud of being individuals in the way that they think about things. And that's part of our culture that was probably a reaction to what we saw in other religious spaces, and we said, well, we don't want to be like that, and so what are we going to be instead? It was a bit of a defiance, perhaps, in what we saw in other religious spaces, and we said, we are going to be different, and we're going to do it this way, and this is what we are going to value. And there are times when that doesn't serve us very well, because what we need is to understand what our common values are and how we can work together to co-create a better world. And we cannot do that with a bunch of really hyper-smart people who have their own idea of things that nobody can challenge and that they're not going to let go of because they're going to hang on to it tooth and nail and be rugged individuals about everything. That doesn't mean we can't think for ourselves, but there are some things we've missed about community and connection while we have been in our heads and in our individual spaces. So one of the things that's changing, I think about Unitarian Universalism in general, but certainly in some of our spaces here locally, is that we're bringing things from our head to our hearts a little bit more, and we're thinking about the other human beings around us. What does it mean for us to be in community with other people? How does my really well thought out theology about things affect all of the other people in this community? And what's my responsibility to them to be wise in how I express the things that I believe? We accept one another and we encourage spiritual growth, which requires us to be a little bit vulnerable about those things that we want to hang on to. We might see this way of focusing on community affect a lot of other little things in the way that we do church as well, in the way that we do community. For instance, this congregation has a really strong musical legacy, and people talk about it all the time. And yet, it may be that if we think about our current priorities and our current values, we want to think about the way that we music differently. Maybe it doesn't make as much sense as it used to for us to gather as an audience and listen to a few talented people present something amazing for us to listen to. That's what has happened in the past. That still happens in a lot of spaces, religious and otherwise. But maybe if we're focusing on building beloved community, it makes more sense to find ways that we can co-create, ways that we can be musical together, ways that we can be creative together, and not have this passive audience experience, but an active experience of being community, which is one of the things I love about Mike bringing in things like a multi-gen choir on a Sunday morning. We've got another one coming up soon. It's a way for us to be engaged and involved and together with what we are creating. And maybe we have to think about how we do our committees and our ministry teams a little differently. We've got some pretty robust agendas with some of these meetings, and if we are busy with our committees and our ministry teams and our decisions and our plans, sometimes what we convey is that busyness and accomplishing things is the most important thing. And maybe we could still accomplish things and prioritize the relationships that we build in those committees and ministry teams. If we are building beloved community, which is one of the things we say we're doing, it's one of the commitments we made in May. We committed to the 8th principle, which says we are committed to building multicultural beloved community. And so if that's our commitment, how do we do that everywhere? How do we build that with our board when it gets together? How do we build that with the lay pastoral care team when it gets together? How do we build that in our RE spaces when people get together? How do we do that in all of the little ways that we are community? Because it's not just going to happen. If it's something that we care about, we might say, this is really important to me. I really want us to have, my notes went flying. I really want us to have multicultural beloved community. I care about that very deeply. I hope that I show up one day and it's happened. That just doesn't work. If we care about that thing, we have to create that thing. And we have opportunities all the time to do it. If we want to create a sense of belonging, we can do that every time we show up. We have an opportunity to do something about creating a welcoming place for people. If we care about justice and equity and compassion, we have an opportunity to do that. It's not just an intellectual exercise where we say, yeah, justice is good, compassion is useful, equity is, I believe in equity, yep. Don't ask me to do anything about it, but I really, really care about those things. And the truth is that for a long time, when we looked out at the larger world, a lot of us, as Unitarian Universalists, were able to see a lot of ways that the world was being what we wanted it to be. We could look at our schools, we could look at our neighborhoods, we could look at our government, and we could say, things are moving in the right direction. I can sit in the pew on Sunday morning and say, I affirm justice, and look out in the world and see places where it's happening. And so one of the changes that we are facing is that the world around us does not always look like that now. There are rights that are being taken away from people rather than expanded. If we care about women's access to health care, we might have to do more than just sit here on Sunday morning and say, I hope that everyone votes the way that I want them to vote. We might have to do something if we care about that. If we care about transgender young people having a sense of welcome and a sense that their identity is to be celebrated, we might have to do more than sit here on Sunday morning and say, well, if they show up, we will celebrate them and love them and welcome them, and I hope they just know we're here and show up and be with us, because that would be great. It would be great. I'm not saying it wouldn't. However, we might have to be agents of change if it's something we care about. If we care about dismantling racism in ourselves and in our congregations and in our other institutions and in our neighborhoods and our government and our schools, there's a lot of places where we might need to act on that value if it's something that we really care about. We're not just agents of change here. We are agents of change in the world around us. And that may sound like I'm getting anxious. That may sound like I'm looking at the world and saying, oh my goodness, there's all of these things that are going wrong and the world doesn't reflect our values the way that I hope that it would, and we've got to do something. We have to do something. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we value things, if we value justice and equity and compassion, if we value a vision of a world community with peace and liberty and justice for every person, we may have to change the way that we demonstrate that value if we want it to be so. We have the opportunity to do something. And we can't all do all the things. All of us are not really, really great at standing up in front of a city council and saying, I think that this is maybe a policy that's unjust, and we should consider doing something differently about it. Some of you are great at doing that, but some of you need to find other ways, because that's not who you are. And so I'm not saying that everybody needs to act the same way out in the world and do the same things out in the world. That's part of the rugged individualism that you get to hang on to. Your way of living our values can be uniquely yours to do. But I think that one of the things that is changing is that we are realizing that we cannot just sit in our churches and expect that the world will eventually be what we want it to be. We can't even sit in our congregation and expect that our congregation will eventually be what we want it to be. We are co-creators here in this space and out in the larger world. And if we are willing to be agents of change and connected with one another, then it is never work that we do alone. So what do you value about this community? What's something that you really, really care about, that you look around and say, this is something that's really important about being in this particular community? Don't just assume that it's going to happen. Don't just assume that it's going to be a part of all of the things that you do. You had the opportunity to be intentional about showing up and saying, you know, here's what I value about this community, and so here's what I'm going to bring forward. I'm going to be intentional about it. And you can contemplate what specific things are yours to do to live into that value, to be the embodiment of that value in this place of connection and hope and spiritual evolution. May you be so bold. We are going to sing together, Building a New Way. It is number 1017 in the teal hymnal, and I hope that you can embrace these words as part of what we are about as a UU community, that we are building a new way, and we get to decide what that way looks like. Let's rise, embody our spirit as we sing together. One of the things that we are working on building is a comfortable sanctuary temperature. You all were really bundled up last week, and now some of you are thinking, how many layers can I strip off and still be tasteful? The heat is working in the sanctuary again. We're working on balancing that out, but we just want to give you something new to complain about every week, and so we're working on that. If you're at home, you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're comfortable and cozy. If you have appreciated our service today, please do like and share and subscribe. This is one of the ways that our ministry can reach out further online. We do have some exciting things that are coming up. We have a Christmas Eve service that's going to be on December 24th, just one service this year at 6 o'clock. And it will include our tableau from our young people or our young at heart people. And so if you are accustomed to organizing some piece of that in days gone by and you want to be a part of it again, Allan, are you coordinating that tableau portion of things? Please contact Allan, Georgia, and let him know that you are enthusiastic about helping to coordinate the tableau. We also, just before that, the week before that, we've got our winter solstice ceremony on the winter solstice, which is Wednesday, December 21st. And there's going to be a planning session for that. If there's some piece that you want to bring to that ritual time, then you can be on a Zoom meeting tomorrow. And Peggy Lagodny, who is sitting in the back waving, can get you the information for that Zoom meeting if it's something that you would like to attend. Please do spend some time with one another in coffee hour and share about the things that are changing in your life and the things that you are doing in the world around you. And I will leave you with these words from John Phillips. We are attendants at the wake of the old way. And each of us, through our actions, our thoughts, our work, and relationships, is midwifing a new world into existence. This is our destiny, our meaning, our purpose. And when we come to our days with this awareness, when we fully wake up to this tremendous privilege, when we sense the oak in the acorns of our being, then we will have the energy to move mountains and shift the tides. It is an illusion that we are powerless. It is an illusion that someone else is responsible. We are the people. This is our world. May we midwife it with peace and courage. Amen, and blessed be.
Please join me with our chalice extinguishing words on your cue card. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.